because of American restraint. This time, they're not going to be so lucky, and Israel is going to retaliate. And when Israel sends its planes and missiles in the sky, they usually hit the intended targets. So I don't know what exactly additional capabilities Iran has. It's a big country with a big military, but I do know that Israel has the most advanced defensive and offensive capabilities capable of dealing with everything Iran throws our way.
Well, Israel has, as you very rightly pointed out, perhaps amongst the best air defense systems. You also have the US in the Mediterranean Sea helping Israel. But do you see more countries get involved in this? Now, the moment there's a direct strike from Israel to Iran, do you see other countries in the region perhaps getting involved?
There's definitely that possibility. I hope it doesn't happen, and I hope that there will be tacit and diplomatic support to Israel. But I think that we should try to avoid a regional and bigger conflict. But, to be honest, Israel has been attacked for about a year from 7 different fronts, all of them related to Iran. So this is really regional already at the lower intensity, but it still is a very regional issue. Missiles being fired by Houthis from Yemen and by Iranian proxies in Iraq and from Lebanon and Syria, from all of the different locations.
So clearly, by all accounts, it appears it's not if, but when Israel will strike and strike back, and will it lead to a major escalation in this conflict. Jonathan Connicus for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks, and we'll be tracking this story very closely from all angles to get you a 360-degree perspective.
The biggest question in front of the world at the moment is how is Israel likely to react after the Iranian missile strikes? Joining us is Dr. Einat Wilf, prominent Israeli citizen, has been a member of the Israeli parliament. Dr. Wilf, thank you for taking out time for India Today. I want to start by asking you to describe as best as you can your understanding of the thinking at the highest echelons of the military and the political establishment in Israel on how Israel is likely to react after these 200+ missiles were fired by the Iranians towards Israeli soil.
I can definitely say that the mood in general across the country is that this ends here, in the sense that they attack, we kind of call it a draw and everyone goes home. It's not in the cards. If you remember, in April, Iran launched a major attack against Israel, and the Americans at the time, very much in a mood of appeasement, which now goes by the name of de-escalation, said, take the win. And I remember thinking that I understand that it's been a while since anybody won a war, but this was not a win. Sitting down and just absorbing attacks, even thanks to our advanced air defense system, that's not a win. Ultimately, the win will have to be the same that it was every time that the world went to war with annihilationist extremist ideologies. Central and Western Europe became free once the Nazis were defeated. Eastern Europe became free once the Soviets were defeated. And the people of West Asia and the Middle East have the right to also be free. And for that, the ideology of the Ayatollahs, the ideology that says death to Israel, and of course, as you can notice, death to Israel is not exactly a negotiable demand. It's not something that we can discuss and agree to kind of reach a compromise. This ideology has to die, like Nazism, like communism, like Imperial Japan, whether it's a hot war or a cold war, but ultimately the Ayatollah regime could not emerge from this war standing.
Okay, so you're suggesting that there will be a retaliation in the response. The concern with that is that that could lead to a full-blown war between Israel and Iran. So far, whatever has happened in the past year, efforts have been made to try and ensure that Iran and Israel don't end up in an all-out war. You're essentially suggesting that the Israeli establishment is okay with that, and you want to press till you can beat Iran and potentially effect a regime change.
It's almost the opposite. If you look at history, Appeasement has not worked, and de-escalation, the new word, also is not working. So many governments have been so afraid of war that in many ways they actually precipitated it by constantly allowing extremist powers like Hamas, like Hezbollah, like Iran to pay no consequences for their actions, for their buildup. So at one point, you actually have to face the core issue. And the core issue is the extremist ideologies. The Palestinian Hamas ideology that says no Jewish state, the extremist ideology of Hezbollah, the extremist ideology of the Ayatollahs. Those are not ideologies that the world can live with over time. At one point, those ideologies have to be defeated, eradicated, and like Germany, like Japan, the people can then pursue a new course of peace. We deserve all to be free, and we need to be free from ideologies that want nothing than death.
Ma'am, the IDF has announced the deaths of 7 soldiers who were killed during fighting in southern Lebanon today. We've seen from the United Nations to the United States very strong calls for ceasefire, saying that, okay, pull back, given the fact that you've been able to eliminate a large part of the Hezbollah leadership, you've been able to turn the tide with all those pager attacks, the explosions, Hezbollah, Iran, both demotivated. At some point in time, the world is urging Israel now to pull back.
Oh, they are still very much motivated. They continue to be devoted to their extremist ideology. Again, we have no territorial dispute with the people of Gaza. We have no territorial dispute with Lebanon. We have certainly no territorial dispute with Iran. Their demand, their ideology is death to Israel. And what we've seen in southern Lebanon is the massive buildup of tunnels, of weaponry, in order to carry out an attack that is 100 times that of October 7th. Israelis understand that we were wrong to sit for nearly 2 decades and allow our enemies to build up on our borders, at our doorstep. This is not halfway around the world. This is at our doorstep. They have built capabilities that could kill hundreds of thousands of Israelis. We cannot sit by and allow this to happen. And frankly, the United Nations in particular has been worse than useless. There have been numerous UN resolutions calling on Hezbollah to arm, on the Lebanese army to assume responsibility. They have done nothing. When do they start calling for a ceasefire? When Israel is beginning to effectively take action to dismantle the weaponry, the infrastructure of Hezbollah. And by the way, we have a century-long experience. Every time that the Arabs attack the Jews, world powers cave to Arab demands. Whenever the Jews in Israel attack back, suddenly there are hysterical calls for a ceasefire. So really the mood right now in Israel is we're not going to stop until these capabilities no longer exist.
Okay, you've given us a sense of the thinking in Israel. Dr. Einat Wilf, for joining us on the news track. Thank you very much. We will track very carefully how Israel does respond to these Iranian missile attacks. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us.
Thank you.
Joining us is Marzi Hashimi, senior journalist with Press TV in Iran. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us. Give us a sense of the thinking in Iran at this time after Tehran fired these 200+ missiles towards Israel, and Israel has said it is determined to retaliate.
Right. Hello. Great to be with you. Actually, 400 supersonic missiles, hypersonic missiles. And I can say well, of course, last night when it happened, people just came out spontaneously out of their homes or just going to the main squares, or some people just in front of their homes, and some with fireworks. People were very, very happy, passing out sweets, congratulating each other. And today I was out. Everything was very calm, back to normal. The people are happy because they had been waiting for something. It's been very difficult, I think, for people around the world to watch what we've all unfortunately been watching, this genocide for 1 year. And with the Israeli regime, and it just continued to get more aggressive and expand its aggression and its terror campaign. I think Iranians and the Iranians I've all talked to, they were very, very happy. And it's not just Iranians. You know, I got messages from people from all over the world, Muslim, non-Muslims, I think any freedom-loving people, and people who can't stand to see such oppression were all very happy and still are.
You're saying Iranians are happy, but what exactly are they happy about? According to the government of Israel, the vast majority of the missiles were intercepted well before they landed anywhere consequential in Israel, and Israel claims that there were 0 casualties from these missile attacks.
Well, first of all, the missiles weren't planned. It wasn't trying to cause any casualties in that sense. It was headed towards military installations, military sites, sensitive sites that have been involved in various terror campaigns. You're saying that the Israeli regime and the Israeli officials are saying that most of the missiles were intercepted. Well, we know from this side, what is being said is that 90% of them hit their target. And we have been getting videos from that area that are videos that have been shared on social media and showing that it's hit. I mean, it would not, obviously, it's not a surprise for the Israeli regime to say that it did not hit. They have very, very strict censoring methods that they have implemented inside of the regime, even for their own journalists. As a matter of fact, earlier in the day prior to this operation, we were talking to some individuals there and elsewhere who had said there were certain operations that had taken place inside of the regime and various attacks, whether it was from the Yemenis or others, that they had strict orders not to report what has happened. And throughout this year, and as a matter of fact, its whole existence, but especially the last year, we have seen lie after lie told. So yes, it's not a surprise that Israeli officials said that the majority of the missiles did not hit.
What does Iran expect will happen next? How prepared are you for the Israeli retaliation, which Tel Aviv says is coming at a time and place of their choosing?
Right. Well, I mean, Iranian officials and the Islamic Republic Guard Force had said yesterday in messages that it was a controlled retaliatory strike to the killing, the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh and Said Hassan Nasrallah and an Iranian commander, Nida Furushan. So it's related to those 3 terrorist attacks particularly. So it was a very limited response. Iran could have definitely responded in a much harsher manner. And what the officials were saying yesterday is that if the Israeli regime decides to attack, that definitely the next time around, the retaliatory attacks will be much worse than what we saw last night.
Okay,
we have to
many Israeli politicians are saying that this is a pivotal moment in the Middle East. They're sensing weakness in the Iranian regime and are seeming quite confident about their ability to force a regime change in Tehran. How do you see this?
Well, that's quite interesting. That's a very interesting comment to come after the day after the night that the Islamic Republic of Iran has carried out these attacks on the Israeli regime. There are those that may think that Iran has become weak, but I can guarantee you there are very few, especially for people who understand from a strategic perspective and from a military perspective. We know that Israel always tried to show that it was invincible, and it created this aura along with the Western hegemonic front that supports it, that it's untouchable. It's so powerful, and of course it is, because they continue to send more and more weapons, equipment, and money to the regime, even in the middle of this genocide. But at the same time, we saw and we continue to see various parts of the resistance movement hitting the Israeli regime, from Yemen to Iraq, Lebanon, and of course we saw the major attack on Iran. So no, I don't think that Iran is weak, and I think the majority of the world today is seeing that as proof. And as far as the government in Iran or the system being overthrown, this is something, a narrative that has been played out since 1979, since the victory of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, when they were saying back then it won't last 6 months. Well, now it's been 46 years, and I can definitely say that the people inside of the country and those outside of the country supported have never been prouder than they were tonight.
Marzi Hashemi, for joining me from Tehran, thank you very much.
Let me now widen this. We will get guests from Tehran as well as from India. KC Singh, former Secretary MEA, served in Tehran. Hossein Ghosh Khelagat is former Editor-in-Chief, Press TV, Tehran. And Jayan Krishna, Senior Fellow, Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. But I want to come to you first, to my guests from Iran. Hossein Ghosh Khelagat, how is Iran seeing what has played out in the last 24 hours? Benjamin Netanyahu saying Iran has made a big mistake. They will have to pay a heavy price for it.
Thank you so much for having me. As you know, Iranian state media reported over 200 missiles had been fired at Israel, including hypersonic weapons for the first time, which was for itself a big story even inside Iran. And as you know, Tuesday attack was Iran's second attack on Israel after a missile and drone attack in April in retaliation for the deadly Israeli strikes on the Iranian consulate building in Damascus. We have also had warning by IRGC officials, including the Joint Chief of Staff of IRGC, which warned of more attacks if Israel goes ahead with attacking Iran. But what is important for now is what I want to mention is the reactions of the government supporters in Iran. Following the attack, the government supporters took to the streets nationwide to hail the IRGC for its retaliatory attack on Israel.
Are you saying a majority of Iranians are supporting what your regime is doing? Are majority supporting this?
No, I was just saying that government supporters took to the streets to hail IRGC for conducting the attack. And what you can see on social and state media right at the moment are footage of missile being fired at Israel. Moreover, state television is broadcasting images of residents of different Iranian cities celebrating missile attacks in streets, waving yellow flag of Hezbollah and portrait, and they actually are showing the images, the pictures, the portrait of the Lebanese
no, but do a majority, Hossein Ghosh Khelagat, I want this clear, do a majority of people of your country support taking on Israel in a direct conflict? Is this what you want?
I was just saying, this is my statement. What we saw, what we observed over the past 24 hours were these government supporters who took to the streets to hail the IRGC for conducting attack on Israel. And I have no idea about the number of people who took to the streets, but what I'm certain is that those who took to the streets were government supporters.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, KC Singh, we are playing these images of the streets of Tehran where you've got pictures of Nasrallah being held up, pictures of Khamenei being held up, and government supporters hitting the street, as Hossein Ghosh Khelagat said. Do you believe that this attack, KC Singh, has widespread support in Tehran from your experience being there? Or is Israel banking on some element of discontent that could lead, they hope, to even internal discontent leading to a regime change?
Rajdeep, let me start by...
Yeah, go ahead,
Let me start by introducing two ironies. Cyrus the Great liberated the Jews 2,500 years ago from the imprisonment in Baghdad, and they were able to go back. So it was really an Iranian emperor who released the captivated Jews to return to their homeland. Now, ironically, again, it's Netanyahu who was on a very sort of on the back foot after October 7 last year, because there was an intelligence failure. He was very unpopular. There were popular protests. So the more the uncertainty, more risky the path he takes, less the danger to him losing power. And that is the problem, because he's gone on extending the area of conflict. And that has suited him, because Israelis have now no option. They've protested against him because relatives of hostages have protested. But today he probably has a nation behind him. Same will happen in Iran. It's an ancient civilization, 3,000 years or more. So once you threaten them, the people will fall in behind the leaders. So the reverse will happen. And I'm sure Netanyahu knows it, but he doesn't care. His thing is to essentially use it to weaken his opponents and the surrogates of the Iranians. They've done it up to a point.
But he could say he's justified, KC Singh, because of the kind of war that the proxies of Iran have launched against him. I mean, he could well claim that he's doing this as he is in some kind of self-defense.
Correct. But you must also remember that even the Chinese, though India has not said that, the Chinese called the first missile attack by Iran on Israel as self-defense. And as we are talking now, the UN Security Council is meeting. There's an emergency meeting. And the representative of Russia, I didn't hear the representative of China, the representative of France also was for ceasefire. They're not fully supporting Netanyahu in what he's doing. They're saying, hey, this needs to stop. And I think the general mood in the Security Council is that America, there's a window available to Netanyahu. American elections are just a month away. Biden is lame duck. Netanyahu is hoping that Trump comes in. I don't think Kamala Harris is that supportive of Netanyahu as Trump would be. And therefore, there is a window of the next 4 weeks, which Netanyahu wants to utilize to achieve his objective, which is to hit the nuclear facilities of Iran. Now, what happens is, I think it's been mentioned that Iran has conveyed silently to the West that if our oil facilities or our infrastructure is hit, we'll even go after US allies in the Gulf, which means that is of concern to India, because if all oil export from the Gulf stops, you can imagine the chaos here. So therefore, when Prime Minister spoke only to Netanyahu, I was very surprised, because we don't get into this. The Chinese President Xi hasn't got into this.
I'm going to just stop you for a moment, Casey, just to get your video. We are having a slight problem with the network. Let me just get back to you. But Jain Krishna, you're hearing what is being said by KC Singh. The United States is obviously a major stakeholder, particularly if now this involves Iran. So far, the US has made it very clear they stand behind Israel. If tomorrow Israel decides to hit a nuclear installation or an oil installation in Iran and this spirals out of control, what do you realistically see the United States doing?
So Rajdeep, it's a very volatile situation. It appears as if the world is on the brink. Those of you of us who have been watching social media, we know people are talking about a possibility of a World War III. I mean, that seems to me extremely far-fetched. But yes, those kind of possibilities are being talked about. And as you rightly said, it is not just bombarding their nuclear installations, destroying their nuclear capability, but even they could go to an extent of insisting on a regime change in Iran, which is also their economy could be very, very badly damaged.
But do you see that happening? Are you really seeing that in the short term Israel will go to the extent of targeting nuclear and oil installations and pushing for a regime change?
I hope that doesn't happen, and I hope that US prevails upon them for a ceasefire. And also I hope UN Security Council is meeting, that there's a UN resolution for whatever it means. The fact is,
but the UN seems completely, if I may be allowed to use the word, almost impotent at the moment in stopping the fight.
Which is very unfortunate, Rajdeep, because it seems to be going the League of Nations way. But in such a situation, whatever needs to happen, I mean, the U.S. pressure on Israel for a ceasefire, the UN resolution, other senior leaders all over the world, if they impress upon them, then the retaliation may not be as harsh as people are talking about, or all Israeli leaders have been talking about. Because let us understand, nobody wins a war. Both sides lose a war. It's only the question of extent of losses on both sides that may vary, So I think to my mind, the wise sense must prevail, and Israel, the world must prevail upon Israel not to progress with the war and not to go for, the kind of hostilities which people are talking about, including their nuclear installations and oil fields and so on and so forth. I fundamentally believe, otherwise the world is going to pay a very, very heavy price. We have seen in the last 1 year or so, the crisis which has been going on in that region,
Right.
Thousands of lives have been lost, civilian structures have been damaged, strategic structures have been damaged. Nobody wins a war. That's a fact. That's a reality.
Can I therefore ask you, KC Singh, in conclusion, what's your best case and worst case scenario? I think more and more Indians certainly are concerned with the worst case. What's your worst case scenario? What's your best case scenario?
Worst case scenario is that they go after the nuclear facilities and they also hit the oil facilities. Then there'll be a retaliation, because we'll see the Iranians go after the oil facility of maybe Saudi Arabia in the Gulf, or they'll try stopping the oil trade from Gulf if their own oil trade is disrupted. The medium-term reasonable kind of conclusion is Iranians will hit back. But remember one thing, we are told nobody's died in Iran, in Israel, other than one Palestinian. Now the reports which are coming in, and media is not carrying them. That is the other unfortunate thing. That bulk of the missiles which have landed at the Israeli air bases and near the Mossad headquarters. I don't think Iranians were targeting civilians. Therefore, the retaliation may be similar. There may be attack on some of the facilities, because Israel has to retaliate, even to satisfy their own public opinion. But if Netanyahu goes all the way, it's possible he has an extreme right-wing coalition. And if he finds he's getting support from the public, he may just widen it. And then, of course, in these 4 weeks, when we have a lame duck US president and nothing much happening, I think anything can happen.
But so you're saying the next 1 month becomes critical because that provides a window to Netanyahu in a way, with the US caught up in its presidential elections, to take the kind of options that he wants. But Hossein Khosh Khelgat, give us again a view. How do Iranians see what is happening? Tell us how is the media in Iran, which is very controlled by your government, how is it reporting it? How are they seeing what is playing out? Is it seeing Nasrullah as some kind of a martyr, a hero? How are they seeing what is happening? How do they see Israel?
Exactly. If just you take a look at the state media, state television these days, it's full of footage of celebrations, of footage of Nasrullah, of fire, of missiles being fired on Israel. It's all about the state television. Even state-funded newspapers are the same. That's all about. That's what.
So they think targeting Israel with missiles, they think it's an occasion to celebrate.
Exactly. It's for when it comes to state media, it's an occasion to celebrate, because the government authorities were under heavy pressure by state media, by government to act, to retaliate the Israeli operations in Lebanon, Israeli operation in Tehran, which led to the death of Ismail Haniyeh. It was the government was under mounting pressure to do something, and after the missile attack on Israel, these government supporters and even government supporters on the state media used the occasion to celebrate and.
So you're saying it's an occasion. I take your point. You're saying it's an occasion to celebrate. Now that should make it also worrying in a way. Jayan Krishna, America in the middle of a presidential election. How is the US seeing it at the moment? Do you sense concern, or is the primary focus on who wins November 5th and then we'll see what happens?
See, I have a feeling, Rajdeep, in these kind of war-like situations, you can't wait for 1 month,